Welcome to Italics, television for the Italian-American experience. I'm your host, Anthony Tamburri. This month we have with us visual artist John Avelluto, who revels in mashups of images, products, and ideas where Italy and the United States converge. Born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, John Avelluto received his MFA from Brooklyn College in 2006 and studied with such artists as Vito Acconci and Jennifer McCoy. He received the Charles G. Shaw Award for Excellence in Painting and has lectured as a visiting artist at the Glasgow School of Art. Avelluto's multimedia work plays with Italian-American culture and the existing linguistic and visual repertoire of references that have gone underappreciated and unexamined. It stands at a crossroads of what in Italian is referred to as contaminazione, moments and places where ideas and idioms collide across ever-shifting borders. As part of the artistic process, Avelluto employs a time-consuming method of layering numerous coats of acrylic paint to create strata of simulacrum, imitating salami slices, dripping pizza, and other items that he augments and then applies to a flat surface. Avelluto currently works in Brooklyn and partners with Stand 4 Community Art Space and the Owl's Head Wine Bar, developing creative outlets in both the visual and literary arts for the Bay Ridge community. His new exhibition at the Calandra Institute, titled Goombarooch Resignified and curated by Calandra's Joseph Sciorra, opened on May 7 and runs through September 13, 2019.
John is playing with Italian-American culture. He's sort of appropriating it, undermining it, and reconfiguring it, and as I say, resignifying Italian-American culture. And what I'm defining as Italian-American culture is this Goombarooch culture, a kind of plebeian, earthy, everyday, vernacular form of Italian-American culture that all too often gets suppressed and undermined by either the sort of forces that come out of Italy, who kind of dictate to a large degree to the diaspora what constitutes Italian culture, and as well as the sort of Italian-American sort of various players who want to present a kind of very positive image of Italian-Americans, right? John is playing with all of that. He's messing with all of us. He does it visually, he does it verbally, and he does it sonically.
Welcome to Italics, John.
Thanks for having me.
I referenced your technique, at least with painting, and this whole idea of layering. Speak to us more about that.
We have so many images in front of us today, usually with a screen, and I thought of painting as separate from just becoming an image. I wanted to think of painting as more of an object, something that you gain from being in its presence, being there. And I think meditating on that, I started treating painting more like sculpture. Mm-hmm. In order to do that, I was working with acrylic paint and pouring it onto surfaces that wouldn't adhere to. So I would be able to then peel, different thicknesses off and different colors with different textures, and then further augment it, either by adding color to it, sanding it down, adding more texture to it. And then I have a piece, an object, something that I could hold in my hand, and then reapply that to a surface. Or sometimes not, and just have it as an object in and of itself. And I sort of wanted to confuse and conflate those spaces. So now I'm incorporating that process further with computers, doing digital drawings and working with laser cutters and CNC routers to further sort of keep my hand within there, because I'm still drawing and doodling on a computer. Mm-hmm. However, the computer is sort of the intermediary.
Yeah.
All those things are planned on the computer beforehand. Now mostly the work is done that way. Mm-hmm. Whereas before I'd have an idea and I'd sort of work at it. Now things are a little bit more thought out.
The writer who goes from the pen to the computer, you're the painter who goes from the computer to the paint.
Right, yep. And it's funny, like I find myself oftentimes thinking about those things and what that means.
Yeah.
What are the tools that, Was there some way before the cave painters in Lascaux were thinking about, painting with their finger, and then somebody else comes along with a brush or another media to sort of create a mark, and then did they say, hey, you're thinking with this new device there, well, what's the difference there? I just sort of think of this as another extension.
Yeah.
So, I think that I have an image and then I get to transpose it, but I like to find those middle places to where you can have spur of the moment, spontaneity. They are fewer now, but they are there, and it's been interesting to try to find where those exist.
This idea of taking the acrylic paint object and putting it on a surface, usually we see, in this case, the painting behind the glass.
Right.
Instead, what we have are frames with glass,
Right.
but the painting, quote unquote, is in front of the glass.
Right. I wanted to accentuate more the idea of the paint as an object.
Yeah.
And I think that this was one of the ways that I could do that and to sort of communicate that to a viewer. I didn't want somebody to come in and think of, this as a painting on a panel right away. I wanted there to be some second guess.
Yeah.
Whether or not this is exactly what you think it is, or a piece of paper, or a salami that's sort of like attached in this way or rendered this sort of way. That this is actually paint, removed from its subsurface, and shown as it is, as something that can travel outside of just the four sides of a panel or of a canvas.
And it makes the viewer have to work a little bit more. It engages the viewer.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope that does come across. I am interested in conflating all these spaces. It seems like even the image itself is something that is many different things can fool you. The talk about what is real and what is not, what is an accurate sort of portrayal of you in culture, and how we want to mimic those things. I wanted people to think about those a little bit more. And to varying degrees it works. I see people that engage with the work in different ways. And it's interesting to see just how it's perceived.
Goombarooch, of course, says, oh, that's Italian-American. How does your Italian-American identity, your experience as an Italian-American, enter into your art?
I think with the symbology of what we find in popular culture for Italian Americana, I think I like to reflect on those things. And now, I've been back in Brooklyn. I never really left New York at all, but there was a period when I didn't live there, and then I came back for my studies at Brooklyn College. And I'm living in really the neighborhood I grew up. I'm like a real townie, and I like that these things are influencing my work more and more. I think after a while I started meditating on what does it mean to be from here, and why, how have these things shifted the way that I think of things. And I like to take them and sort of find new contexts for them. So, I think that from the very food things, which are supposedly, we'll start there because those are the earliest works that are shown in the exhibition. Food has always been something that, hey, you must love food. I don't know a culture that doesn't love food. But there's specifics about what is that. And these were always things for me that I'm wondering, even though they are Italian, well, are they anymore? Is pizza more American now than hot dogs? And going through all that, what does this representation break down to? And that's why, this metaphor within paint, where you create something that is hyper-real, all of a sudden it has texture, has the feel, and you think that it is that, not just, an image, because you're going to go into an exhibition, you see something flat, you're looking at a representation, a representation. However, there's this second guessing where this thing becomes realer than real. Is this actually the material that it says it is? And you could, sort of see it in a very, very hyper-real sort of way. And you get to then question, and that was a way for me to question, certainly, is this real? Is this really part of who I am? And in ways, yes, and in ways, no. So I think that that's really where a lot of this started coming from. And those works were made in 2008, so over 11 years ago. And there are even these substrates that are there that mimic a tabletop. None of that is actually a tabletop. The wood grain and everything else is full bois. So that is all trompe-l'oeil. And none of that is actual panel. It is entirely comprised of paint.
And then many of the other works are a little bit more abstract in a way.
Definitely. I think as time goes on, those paintings were created about 9 years, beginning 9 years after those first paintings that I was describing were made. And I started becoming more interested in abstraction. It's someplace that holds always a place in my mind, thinking about abstraction, what that means contemporarily. I like this idea of being able to conflate abstraction with hyperrealism, because even those substrates that you think they're paper or gold leafing is created with paint. And I think I was liking to take a lot of these things that existed within the timeline of Italian art, going back to, sort of the icon paintings that were brought into Italy from the Byzantines, the icon paintings with usually a saint or something on them. And taking that and, just using the visual cues of it, but then changing it, augmenting it, throwing in this idea of just the quick doodle into the whole thing. And where does the computer find itself within all of this? So I'm always trying to find different places and different ideas and sort of throw them all together and seeing what results from that.
You studied with Vito Acconci, for example, and also Jennifer McCoy.
I think I got a lot out of studying with the both of them, and very different perspectives that I had in the studio, especially from somebody like Acconci, to where, like sometimes we would speak in the studio and he'd be like, well, I don't really know how to talk about painting. And we would talk about other things surrounding painting, and that was incredibly helpful, I think. We found this sort of like equilibrium between different worlds. And also, the influence of Jennifer McCoy and her class Aesthetics of Information, I think, was incredibly helpful in order to create, from somebody who was coming from a painting and drawing perspective, to start thinking about other ways that these things influence the realm of painting. I think that those were definitely very helpful and influential. And at the same time, I was studying with Elizabeth Murray as well, who then later passed on. And certainly with the way that she treats a canvas as an object that's shaped, she shapes the canvas and then puts different configurations together on the wall. Certainly found its way into my studio practice today, and something that I meditate on.
Besides Goombarooch Resignified, there are a couple of other titles, like Maloik is one of them, which I'm assuming is an Italian-American reference.
That is. Maloik is definitely a play on Malocchio.
Malocchio.
I am very interested also in how words abstracted themselves in the transfer from one country to another, and then over time, as it enters into a public discourse. That particular iconography is very interesting to me to think about its origins, what it means, what it started meaning, which is basically, the symbol, the horns, which comes from the idea of the cuckoo, which the term cuckold comes from. And this was something apparently that you wished upon somebody in Italian culture, or would protect yourself from getting. And as I was very, very young when I was introduced to this, because you would actually, upon baptisms and other events, life events, you would receive a charm, a golden charm of either the horn itself or the actual protection pointing down,
exactly,
to wear on your neck. But you'd see them on somebody's, on the dashboard of somebody's car, hanging from the rear view,
the
or on your
proverbial
front door.
Red.
Exactly, you'd see it all the time at the feast, la festa. And it was interesting. I see it less now, but it was interesting to me where I did find its remnants, and its remnants were being found in concert culture. Ronnie James Dio, the second frontman for Black Sabbath after Ozzy Osbourne, and his own solo project, Dio, got this idea. It would be like really metal and really like satanic because it was a curse that he saw his mother doing. And he started doing this to the crowd. and the crowd would subsequently give it back to
Give
him.
it back to him.
And now you find it at not just heavy metal, it's lost its meaning, and its meaning is now, just something cool you do at a concert, like, yeah, this is rock on, just rock and roll. So you could find it at, like, I don't know, Britney Spears concerts now, So from one meaning, it's found itself through all these different, avenues of culture, and barely means what it used to. And that's very interesting for me, and how the word itself has changed. We get into phonetics more with Italian culture. Galama is very interesting to me. And I put a call out on Facebook to see what are the ways that you spell words in Italian culture. And I got hundreds of responses of, different spellings of Galama, Kalama, Galamè, and how people spelled that. And that representation is very interesting for me, because those are offshoots for a new idea. So I thought about that, and about painting and abstraction itself, and how those two things override. So I was thinking about tons of words that come along with that. The evil eye.
Right.
The word, even the word, when you say Italian, the Americanized version, Italian, the I coming into this, like, where does that cross over? How can I find a visual place for this within a square or rectangle? All these things were very interesting to me, and I just wanted to see where it would take me. So, those words, like, are springboards for me for making a lot of these abstract works, especially as I go further down that line.
You mentioned that little kids get these gifts at communion, first communion, etc. And because in the belief system, children are more susceptible. If someone paid you a compliment as a kid, there would be an older woman around who would say "Benedig," may God bless, and that's actually protection from the evil eye.
Wow. I think it's really great, and also to see, even in the neighborhood which I live now, which we have a significant amount of Middle Eastern population, and we share really a great discourse with them, to see, like, well, what are the things in their culture that sort of cross over with that. As you go down there, you wind up seeing even, the beginning of that in Turkey, the Nazars, and we have, like, a bunch of those in the neighborhood, going down to the Israeli version of that, which is also the hand with the eye inside that. And seeing just how that just changes over there, but that idea sort of stays around.
Yeah.
It's funny to see the mashups of cultures and where things cross over, so you never know where do things end and where do they begin.
This cross-culturing, it's that contaminazione in a certain sense, one of various forms of the contaminazione, which we can now use in a positive way, right? The contamination as opposed to a negative sort of use of the word. You mentioned medieval art, so I want to go back a little bit to Europe. Who were some of the Italian artists that you look back on?
As I was younger, I didn't have, like, any formal training with art. My father knew that I had sort of liked art because I was drawing all the time. So he would bring home these Italian magazines, and they had a collection from each museum, from the Prado, from the Uffizi, and so on, the great collections in all of Europe. And I would look through all of those and look for specifically the Italian artists, of course, were prominent in there. And nowadays I'm looking at much more when I go to the Met, because I have that collection to go see and to experience. I'm looking at Carlo Crivelli quite a bit, who had in such a great way of representing people. It seems almost like illustration. Also, the way that they create these icons that are meant to be part of architecture inside a church, how they shape the background, or they're meant to fit within an altarpiece and things like that. All that stuff is very interesting to me. And also this very interesting, and like you were describing before, about the Italian woman, the older Italian woman standing behind the children and saying these things. There was always something to figure out. There was always some sort of like clues left inside there that you're not part of that discourse to find out. There is one Crivelli piece that's at the Met, and it's a Madonna and Child. And the child is holding a dead bird in its hand. And it's holding the dead bird like this. And there's a small fly there, and he's looking at it. And this fly is supposed to represent death.
Yeah.
And the child, Jesus, is protecting the bird from death, sort of foreshadowing the future. And that's always very, very interesting. And there's way more that you could read into those paintings. So those are sort of things that I like to think about now, especially how over time as well the form of a human is depicted, just pictorially from a technical standpoint. And I kind of like to look back at those ways because they seem crude, but they were thinking more advanced. So you can't almost avoid the repeating of the past, but the word unique is used a lot in art. It has to be unique.
Yeah.
And that's not something you could particularly just strive for anyways. And I think it comes through the practice of thinking about the past and then just living in the moment as well. And new things happen. And a lot of this, thinking about this contaminazione,
Right.
and the ways that other things influence you or cross-contaminate, I think that I like to think about nourishment instead, because they create a gray area. You have one color and another color, and they sort of start feeding into each other. And then you have new shades that come across that way. And I think that that's where I like to be.
What are you working on now?
Well, I think relevant to the conversation we're having now, I have a series of paintings where I'm sort of depicting the medallions that we see typically on male chests and the different iconography you find there. So I'm rendering those things and creating things like gold chains and necklaces out of paint and hanging them upon the surface. And just thinking about the images in ways that we could abstract them, but still get the sense of something incredibly male, certainly. I feel like a lot of this was like male iconography or centered or at least geared for that, and seeing ways we could sort of confound that and play around with it in a pictorial way that won't necessarily mean that anymore. This body is developing right now, so this is the third painting in this series. The drawing that I did gets cut out, and then I will determine the line work on there as well. The paint goes through a lasering process, so this is just paint. This goes through on the glass. Well, then I'll do a drawing, and then it'll be put through a laser cutter, and the laser cutter will etch whatever I draw onto the paint surface. This is just colorless paint. Right now I'm just making sure that this adheres to this panel. So by adding this to this surface and then this surface, and as the time goes on, it'll dry and it'll be pretty secure. Make sure all the air bubbles are out from underneath it. When you finish them, then you get to see it, and that's pretty fun. But every time you make one is a struggle. As you try to do something else different, you try to change something instead of making the same painting. So at the end, you always try to challenge yourself to make something else, push it someplace else, leave an element of surprise. I try not to know entirely what I'm doing all the time. If I knew what I was doing, then I probably wouldn't do it. You push your technique to wherever you need it needs to be. You're self-critical. You're your own judge. And how other people receive it is totally out of my hands. And that's part of what makes, art interesting. If I were to control the way that you receive it, then what's the point? I think the more complicated these things get in terms of technique, concepts, execution, probably the better. You try to project for now, there's something that you want to do now, and hopefully it carries and translates into the future, but then it'll be something different, something totally different than what I expected. You can't anticipate those things. So basically, I'll do like a preliminary drawing someplace else, like small studies, and I'll take it into here, and basically, you could just draw into this image. I'm always trying to push that idea of the objectness further.
Yeah.
And as I get used to, it's been 10 years that I've been working in this manner. As it, becomes more facile, I'm able to really articulate it. And I think right now I've been happy to work with new machines and figure out ways that we could push it each time we go in, which also gives me a heart attack every time. It's no longer, an inexpensive thing. It's way more expensive labor.
And if you get somewhere where you don't want to be, you know, like, oh, this isn't the shape I wanted. Can you manipulate the paint, or are you already there and you can't?
It depends. It
Yeah.
always depends. Sometimes, I've just recently I had to throw away about a week's worth of labor and materials. Sometimes I could save it. Sometimes I cannot.
Yeah.
Depending on really what I want and what the intent is behind it. I like to think more dynamically. You know, I love that way of doing it. But sometimes, you know, it's really what you want from the piece. If I'm making a work that is that has to deal with this sort of spontaneity and talking about those sort of things, we don't make mistakes. We make happy accidents.
Yeah, you're working with paint and going beyond the stereotypical notion or the conventional notion of painting.
And I have trouble, like, again, talking to other painters about it because it doesn't feel like, you know, from a technical standpoint or even a conceptual standpoint, it feels like a different practice.
Yeah.
Feels a little bit different. But, you know, this is going into this realm where I don't know where things are going to end up.
Well, but we'll use that word you just mentioned. It makes your work unique.
Right, right.
It's resignified.
Right.
To go back to the Goombarooch, right?
That's right.
Thanks for joining us.
Really
All right.
appreciate it.
Thanks for watching this episode of Italics. I'm Anthony Tamburri. Arrivederci alla prossima puntata.